Well, a very good morning. Thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the 3rd of January. Hope you all had a great new year. Um, Interesting weather pattern at the moment across the northern hemisphere, not just across Europe. But when looking at the finer details of this pattern, folks, there is a lot of hallmarks on the same type of setup as what we had back in 2011, 2012, where we had a blocking area of high pressure and a mega blocking pattern. As you can see here, one sitting over the North Pacific, the other sitting over the North Atlantic, and we've got two areas of major cold within the mid-latitude region here. We've got cold, bitterly cold air now starting to infiltrate into Eastern and Central Europe, while we've got the blocking area of high pressure sitting over the UK, generally protecting us from both stormy conditions as well as the bitterly cold air that's to our east. This was something that I'd mentioned way back in the winter forecast, that this was always going to be a concern, that if we did get a block, the block could conceivably be too close to the UK, and therefore it would stop the motherload of cold coming into the British Isles here. Now, what we will expect to see is, I think we're going to see that core of cold weaken, but push into the western side of Europe before all is said and done here. But you notice here the fact that we don't have a lot of positive in the Arctic. That is indicative of a very strong polar vortex now. So the polar vortex has significantly recovered from the autumn time, and when you get that, you tend to have lower heights over the Arctic region here. So we are starting to see, are likely to start to see a pickup in Arctic sea ice as the cold temperatures start to bundle once again. But we do have two major areas of cold air in the middle latitudes, one over the western side of Canada and the United States, and the other over Eastern and Central Europe here at the moment in time. We of course are seeing, like I said in the written post yesterday, we are seeing heavy snowfall now starting to cover a large swathe of Europe, and with Arctic high pressure or Siberian high pressure now starting to push in to Europe. Now, I want to draw your attention here. We've got a positive height here over eastern Mongolia and over the north of China here. Notice here we've got a negative core here to the north near the Siberian Arctic coast, but follow the isobars here, folks, in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and they are generally pushing major cold air over eastern Asia westwards here into this trough. So it is essentially, we've got an upper level setup here that is forcing Siberian air into this deepening trough over Europe here. So this is a fascinating pattern, and very, very similar to what we had back in 2011, 2012, when the UK, yes, we've seen 10 days of very cold weather, particularly across the southern half of the UK, not so much up across Scotland, but the main core of cold was centered over Europe, and temperatures is going to be interesting to see just how cold it gets later on this week here. So this is off the CFSV2. This is the upcoming 7-day 500 millibar height anomaly chart. This is the 8 to 14 day, and you can see here that we've lost the major deep trough over Europe, and essentially that is now sitting between Scotland and Iceland here. So the modelling may be trying to indicate that we're going to see more of a westward push of the cold, while we start to see temperatures recovering across Eastern and Central Europe here. But we still have a negative here, so it still is cold. Also notice that we're starting to lose that nice teleconnection Rex block situation between the North Atlantic and the North Pacific. Notice here the core of the coldest air now, or the deepest trough at 500 millibars, is now centered over Western Canada here. That's interesting to see. So we've weakened the depth of the trough over Europe. We're now starting to see the the deepest trough anywhere in the hemisphere now centered over the western side of North America here. That doesn't mean that it isn't bitterly cold still over Europe. But notice here the positive starting to show up a little bit more over the Arctic here, which would indicate that we are seeing some form of a push from Arctic down into the middle altitude region in the 8 to 14 day period. This is week 3, and this is the day 15 through 21, and we're now starting to see that core of cold now position itself over the North Atlantic, but we're starting to see a blocking area of high pressure over Scandinavia. So that could be interesting. That could be a cold signal for the western side of Europe. Also notice here that we've started to reverse the upper heights here over northwestern North America and Alaska. We now have a ridge on the east coast of the United States. That would be reflective of a trough over Alaska. You tend to find the trough over Alaska, ridge over the east coast, but that might not necessarily reflect a particularly warm pattern. Just as the same way that we could be talking about a very significant spell of cold weather if this was to happen over Scandinavia, where we have this big ridge of high pressure. This Scandinavian block would be potentially a classic easterly flow situation for the UK here. So this is generally me just skipping through the CFSV2 weeklies, what I'm seeing at the moment in time. And there certainly is some interesting things to come here. Day 21, 22 through 28, you can see here that we remain with a positive over Scandinavia, over Europe as well. In general here, we've got a negative here over the North Atlantic. So we're starting to see more positive NAO, positive AO, and this is a way out. This is going to chop and change something awful here, folks, because this is talking about the last week in January. We're only on the 3rd of January, but heck, there is a lot of interesting things to come here, folks. We do have a cold Europe at the moment, modestly cold UK. We're seeing a back and forth between Atlantic and Arctic, like I said in the winter forecast. But all is not said and done. I drove up through the Highlands yesterday with a skiff of snow in some places, but for January, it wasn't a big deal. Temperature wise, it wasn't particularly cold. It was chilly, but you know, it's early January. You could have 6-foot snow piles at the side of the A9. You could have Dalwhinnie down to -15, -20. We aren't seeing that at the moment, but it doesn't mean we won't see that at some point this winter. So we'll wait and see what happens. Hope you have a great Tuesday, and I'll be back again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye for now.